Hi there. This video is about interpreting and locating integers. And if this is your first time doing a video with us, I just kind of want to describe what's going to happen. I'm going to go over the notes you should have received in class, and what we expect you to do is follow along in the video and take notes with me. So when I'm filling something in on the notes, you're filling it in as well. If I or Ms. Clipman writes something extra out to the side, we expect you to write that down as well. The great thing about videos is that if I get too far ahead of you, or I'm talking too fast, or you get behind, you can always go back and re-listen to it, or pause it if you need to get caught up. You can stop it if you want to try to answer the questions ahead of me and see if you get them right, and then listen to it. What we don't want you to do is to mute the video. It's not helpful to you to just copy and not listen. So make sure you're paying attention. A lot of this year is about you owning your own education, and so we want you to be responsible for what you're learning, and so we need you to put your best effort into it so that you can be successful, and we're here to help you with that, but really a lot of this is up to you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Before we can interpret and locate integers, we need to know what an integer is. Basically, integers are a set of numbers, a group of numbers that include all the positive whole numbers. So that would be like 1, 2, 3, 4. They're opposites. And we're going to talk about opposites later. And I bet you already know. The opposite of a positive number would be what? A negative number. So it's the positive whole numbers, the negative whole numbers, and then it also includes this number 0. And if you put those all together, you have a group of numbers called integers. The numbers that are less than 0 are a special type of integer. They're the negatives, which we will talk about some more. So less than 0, your negative integers. So your integers all together, the total set of integers are your positive, your negatives, and 0. So -1, -2, 0, +1, +2. Those are your integers. The positive numbers are always going to be, what do you think, compared to the negative numbers? They're always going to be larger or greater than your negative numbers. The opposite is also true. Negative numbers are always smaller or less than the positive numbers. And these are just symbols for that. A positive is greater than a negative is less than a positive. And then the only number that's a little different is 0, because it is neither negative or positive. It's just right there in the middle. We can see sort of picture what the group of integers looks like by looking at a number line. So most of you, if I asked you to label this number line, would start with 0 in the middle, and you would be correct, although that's not where it always has to go. We can move it around as we need to, and we'll see that later. But if we put 0 in the middle, then where would your positive numbers be? Hopefully you know they're out to the right. So after 0 would come 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those are your positive whole numbers. And then to the left, you have the negative numbers. So those would be the opposite of these numbers. So after 0, what would be the first negative number? -1, then -2, -3, -4, and -5. All right, so this group right here, this whole group, is your set of integers. Notice that as you go to the right on the number line, these numbers are getting larger. They're bigger. If you move to the right, they're bigger. The opposite is also true. If you move to the left, the numbers are getting smaller, which is kind of confusing to some people. All right, they think, well, 5 is bigger than 4, so why isn't -5 bigger than -4? Well, one way to think about that is think about it in terms of money. Like if that -5 stood for me owing you $5, okay, what would be more negative, or what would be owing you more? Owing you $5 or $4? Well, owing you $5. That is the bigger negative. It is the smaller. I owe you more, so I have less money. So the further you travel to the left, the smaller the value gets. And the opposite is also true. The further you travel to the right, this direction, the larger the value gets. Oops, can you see that? Okay, so on the right, you're getting bigger. On the left, you're getting smaller. So let's look at interpreting integers. That's when you use an integer or a number to represent a real life situation. So in this first example, it says 15 degrees above average. Well, the number is 15. That's not going to change. What you're really deciding is if this number should be positive or negative. Well, here's the word that's kind of your clue. Above would be either a positive or negative 15. What do you think above would stand for? Hopefully you're saying positive. And so I would want to make sure this is a positive 15. Now, I don't have to write a positive sign in front of the 15. It's just assumed to be positive. The only time you write a sign is if it's negative. So we don't need the positive there, nor would you see a positive sign there. All right, on number 2, it says a loss of 7 yards. So again, 7's your number, loss is your keyword. Do you think that means negative or positive? Well, losing something is a negative integer. All right, number 3, car price dropped $500. So what do you think, negative or positive? Negative. $34 deposit into a savings account. Now for this one, you really need to know what this word deposit is. It means to add money to your savings account. So what do you think if you're putting money into your savings account? So you're getting bigger or smaller? It's getting bigger. So this would be, deposit would be positive 34. Number 5, withdrawing $70 from a checking account. If you withdraw money, you have to know what that means. From a checking account, what you're doing is taking money out of your checking account. So is your account getting bigger or smaller if you're taking money out? It's getting smaller. So withdrawal is negative. So this would be negative 70. It is sometimes helpful to have a list of numbers or a list of words that we can use to represent positive and negative numbers. So that's what we're going to fill in here next. So you can use these as you do your homework, in case you forget what one of these words might mean. So let's look at the examples we started with. In the first example, 15 degrees above average. Was that a positive integer or negative? That above made it positive. So I'm going to put that in the first line because it was positive. What would be the opposite of above? Below. And below, if they use the word below, that's going to represent a negative integer. Okay, look at number 2. Loss of 7 yards. That represented a negative integer. So I'm going to put it in my list of negatives. And then I want to see if I can come up with a word that might mean the positive and kind of be the opposite of that. So the opposite of loss in words would be what? Probably gain. Number 3, a car price dropped $500. So we said drop meant it was negative. So we're going to put drop down here. Now there's always, or usually there can be more than one way to say drop. So you might also see decrease. The positive or the opposite of drop would be what? Probably increase. And again, there may be other ways to say that mean the same thing, but we're just going to list a few. In number 4, we said deposit meant a positive change in your account. So we're going to list it with our positive words. And the opposite of deposit was withdrawal. That's when you take money out. And then a couple other words I want you to know is that if you hear the word earn, that would be a positive integer. You're adding money to what you have. And so the opposite of earning would be what? To spend money. So that would be a negative integer if you spend money. And again, there are many other words that might mean positive or negative. This is just a few to help you get started. The last thing you have to do is be able to locate integers on a number line. So again, here's a number line. We're going to have to label the number line before we can locate -7 on it. A lot of times we start with 0 in the middle, but sometimes that doesn't leave us enough room for all the numbers we need. So it doesn't have to be right in the middle. So since I know that -7 has to be on my number line, I'm going to start with -7. And because it's negative, I know it's going to be on the left of my number line. So I'm going to put -7 here. And then what would come next? -6, -5, -4, -3, -2, -1. 0, 1, 2, and 3. To graph an integer or graph any number on a number line, you want to put a dot on the number line above the number. So we're not circling the number, we're putting it on the number line itself. I'm just right above that number. All right, so that would be -7. The second example says to locate the set of integers -4 to -1. So set of integers just means there's going to be more than one point graphed on the number line. Again, I need to label my number line, so I'm going to start maybe with the smallest number. So here's a good time. We're going to be talking about this more in another session, but which is smaller, -4 or -1? Well, think about it. Which comes first on the number line? Okay, so think about what your number line would look like. Would you start with -1 or would you start with -4? Hopefully, you know, -4, then -3, -2, -1, 0, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now, above each of these numbers, I should put a dot. So above the -4 on the line, above the +2 on the line, and above the -1 on the line. I'm going to make my, I'm going to graph my point. The last one says to locate the set of integers 0, 5, and -2 on the number line to the right. So you can see that these number lines are a little bit different. These are horizontal number lines. This is a vertical number line, but it works the same way. All you need to know is where the positive and negative numbers are. So where do you think positive number is going to be? They're going to be up, and the negative number is going to be down. All right, this one's already labeled for us, so we just have to find the points. So I want to start with 0. I'm going to find 0 in this number line and put a dot. On 5, I'm going to put a dot as well, and then -2 is down here. So I have my 3 points on the number line. All right, so just as a quick summary, the integers are the set of numbers that include our positive whole numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they include the negative whole numbers, -1, -2, and they include 0. Remember, 0 is not positive or negative, it's just its own little entity there. And remember, as you go to the right, the numbers get bigger, and as you go to the left, the numbers get smaller. And then you've got a set of words here that help you remember when you have a positive or a negative. And when you're graphing, just make sure that dot is above the number you're graphing. All right, that's all for today. I'll see you later.